Hey, you guys, long time no see. I've been very busy. My patrons and my members know what my vibe has been, but I haven't forgot about you guys. I actually have a lot of videos recorded. They are just not currently edited. So in about a little over a week, you guys will start to get some edited content from me. But with that said, there is a discussion that I want to have with you guys. And that's surrounding, and Mr. really, like, I was thinking this, but he really, like, brought it to my attention as far as, like, processing it. And it's that a lot of people think that we're getting somewhere. Like a lot of people are in a whole delusion. They think that we're getting somewhere and we're not getting anywhere. And before we came on air, I had to stop our conversation because we were about to really get into it because I was making a point, and I guess I'll just start with you guys where our conversation began so that you guys can be, on the same wave as we are. So I was thinking, everybody has. So Mr. was pointing out how, the sports teams, they weren't playing, in honor or in solidarity with, being against this violence against mainly Black men and all of this. And I said, yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because there is an agenda for the immigrants, like the illegal immigrants, the people who aren't even citizens of this country. There is an agenda for what's going to happen with them, right? That's from the Democratic side. On the Republican side, Trump is literally giving people citizenship during the Republican National Convention. Now, granted, they weren't illegals, but my point is that there is an agenda for everybody. There's an agenda for the businesses. There's an agenda for people who aren't, even citizens of this country. There's an agenda for the labor unions. There's an agenda for every sector of American society, every group of people represented. But when it comes to Black people, and Michelle Obama, I don't want to go on a rant, but she literally pissed me off at the Democratic National Convention. First of all, she had the nerve to bring up all lives matter. She didn't use the words all lives matter. And I'll rant about this in an edited video later. But she literally said all lives matter, right? 2 times in her little speech, and had the nerve to say that if we don't vote for Joe Biden, that we're dishonoring our ancestors. Just manipulative and everything. But here's the thing. The Democrats don't have an agenda for Black people. They're more concerned about people who aren't even part of this country. They're not even citizens. They have a whole blueprint for how they're going to make their community better, how they're going to give them citizenship, how they're going to ensure that they're safe, how they're going to defund ICE. But for Black people, other than a whole montage about George Floyd and people getting shot, and then somehow twisting that into all lives matter and police reform. Why is police reform your agenda for Black people? That's not even an agenda that solely benefits us. The illegals get agendas that solely benefit illegal aliens. Black people can't get anything that solely benefits us. So what is interesting to me is they use people like Cardi B to pander to us. They shut down sports teams to show solidarity with us. So apparently the way you reach Black people is with celebrities and sports, because we clearly don't have functioning brains. We clearly are only looking for you to bring out an entertainer, because that's what athletes and celebrities are. And you can speak to us in our native tongue with a rapper or somebody who bounces a ball for a living, because that touches at the core of what we are as a Black community. You don't have to come with any solid agenda that only benefits the Black community. You just have to agree not to bounce your ball for a couple of weeks. So this idea that everybody's on board with, like, wanting to protect the Black community and helping the Black community and protecting, it's BS. And if you think it's not BS, you're delusional. Okay, but I'm going on a rant, babe. What?
A little bit, a little bit, but it's okay. It's, it's a good rant. But what I wanted to convey was, you know, I really wanted to play on the word illusion and just break the word down into ill, being sick. And specifically, and in particular, I'm talking about Black folks because there's a sickness, unfortunately, that some of us have that we feel as if that there's this delusion, right, that you have in your title, and sickness at the same time that we are making some progress in this quote, moment, because that's what it is, to frame it this George Floyd moment, because it's not a movement, right? It's just a moment. And it's really insulting, like you alluded to earlier, but it's insulting to me because Black folks are really looking at this as if this is the second civil rights, right? It's the second coming of the civil rights. And I'm like, well, the first coming of the civil rights wasn't even that good because really, you know, what is the progress that we made? You can say the Voting Right Act and so on and so forth, this, that. And you could talk about, Brown v. Board, which I don't think in itself was the best thing that ever happened to Black folks. But okay, you could mention some of those things. But what, where, what are the ways in which that Black folks have really progressed on a major scale? There's been pockets of advancement, but again, like you alluded to earlier, what has specifically been geared toward Blacks? Because you could say a lot of those acts really, similar to, analogous to, what is it, the affirmative action, benefited white folks, in particular white women. And so and I'm trying to go on a rant, but we are really disillusioned. I mean, we have this, this, this love affair with symbolism. And we talked about this last time. We had a disagreement because we were talking about, the statue, so on and so forth. And the reason why I'm bringing up symbolism because, I'm an NBA fan, right? I enjoy the sports, right? And again, you have a multiplicity of Black millionaires, some, you know, more wealthier than others, right? But the I just don't understand how you could really think that the fact that you have Black Lives Matter on the court, you have social justice sayings on the on the back of your jerseys, right? And you're advocating for people to vote and all these different things, all these mantras that are coming out of your mouth. How in the hell did you think that was going to prevent another Black person from getting shot? I'm just dumbfounded. You really thought by you doing these things that was going to actually prevent some brother or sister from getting shot. And when it did happen, you're in your feelings like Drake.
I,
Really?
I just don't know. And I don't know, you may or may not agree with me. I just really don't know why complain, y'all. I don't know why anybody's complaining. Now you guys know me. My vibe, my personal vibe is revolution. Short of a revolution, you need to be a productive member of society. And society is not set up for you. So I don't understand the constant whining about our place in society collectively as Black people. Y'all don't want a revolution. So if you don't want a revolution, then you know what? You're going to get shot 5 times in your back in front of your kids. That's what's going to happen to you. And you need to just accept it and move this thing along and stop marching and tossing stuff up like you're messing stuff up. If we're not really going to toss stuff, then I'm going to need you guys to get in line. We might as well just get in line and get in our respective places within this society. The thing is, we want our cake and eat it too. We don't want to have a revolution because that's too much work. But then we want revolutionary action for people who don't respect anything outside of the status quo. This is the Western world, Western as in a European conquered country. So I don't know what all the whining and complaining is about.
Well, I think we want I think we want the great paternalistic father to come save us. I really think, because I'm listening, with all due respect to these players, right? These athletes. But again, they're pushing on to whom? Their owners. You all have to do more. You all have to do, and granted, maybe they could be doing more because they have the power, the majority of them, white billionaires with a lot of power and influence, and they can make things happen. So I get that argument. But again, there's a dependency on, this white paternalism, like, you have to come and save us. You have to come do something about this. You have to make, I'm like, and that's the problem that I have with this. I mean, there's so many, as you said at one time, look at all those black millionaires. And yes, there are a lot of black millionaires, but I don't know. I don't see them, the collective. I don't see the collectivity. I don't see the collaboration with that wealth that they have and actually doing something. And again, it's a double-edged sword because again, you have to work and run for massa. And again, they're supposed to be so liberal, bleeding heart white folks who are, again, we have Black Lives Matter on the streets, and we're really doing something. Heck, where I currently am, we have more Black Lives Matter signs and businesses and on residential properties than they actually have black people. So
no, he's not lying though. What is it? Is it 4% black people or some?
I mean, what are we really talking about here?
White, but Black Lives Matter signs everywhere.
So what are we really talking about? So, I mean, people just thought that the signage, that the mantra, that again, dependent upon others to come save us, and you really getting mad at others because these things are still happening. And now you're getting on, within the NBA, there was, some scalding and there was some, really admonishment of a lot of these players who were not registered to vote. And they're like, oh, only 20% of you are registered to vote. How can you be talking about this and that? And I'm like, okay, I would get that argument because of local voting, because local voting matters and everything. We're talking about your, your city council. You're talking about your school board. Local politics does matter. But if you're talking about what's going on in November, I mean, that's already pretty much that's already been done. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that to me, again, I know our ancestors fought for the right and everything. So I get that. But listen, we know other folks
fought for a right of something that they didn't understand the game.
Well, they fought
for the right. They fought for the right to participate in the way that they thought the system worked.
Absolutely.
We're functioning in something else. But can I ask you, are we opening up the panel for people to come up?
Well, let me finish and then we could open it up. But I just wanted to say that we often depend on these systems that are in place not really to support us. So if we're dependent on the vote, I mean, did we vote to get the right to vote? No, it was given to us. So again, if we're going to be, if we're going to actually have a revolutionary practice, as you alluded to, we have to really be unapologetic and stop wishing for others to do for us and actually do for ourselves. And however that looks is however it looks. I was walking around here, I have a shirt and it reads Black Love Black. And I got some looks because I was walking in the store, walking around, this primarily white city and state. And people were kind of looking. Of course, they didn't say anything, but they kind of looked like, you know. Now, it wasn't anything offensive, but I wore it intentionally because I don't think all the time that we love each other. You know what I mean? I think we definitely love white folks, and I think definitely think we think their ice is always cooler.
Oh, we
And
can't stand each other.
I don't really think we can stand each other. I agree with you. I
We
concur.
cannot stand each other. We got all the beef. We have all the smoke for other Black people.
I think the brother great Neely Fuller Jr. says it best. I mean, we need to really stay away from each other. I
Ew.
mean, as comical as that sounds, but we often don't do anything good for each other. But we definitely love other folks, in particular white folks. And white folks love white folks. I mean, especially they love themselves. Now, they'll do some other white folks dirty to benefit themselves, but we have this xenophilic orientation that we love everybody. Come on in. I mean, that's why we get, that creep, that killer that comes into the church and does what he does. I mean, that's why we open up our arms. I mean, it's a gift and it's a curse. But going back to the NBA, I just think that, I mean, the naivete that they displayed over the past few days, and I can understand them being upset, everything. Yeah, seeing a brother get 7 shots of his back and everything definitely upsets me, you know, because I mean, I have to live this trauma, every day, and I have been living it for a long time. I mean, so these type of things are just not, you know, they're not in vogue. You know what I mean? These types of things when they happen. I mean, I've been living with these type of ordeals for several years, and it doesn't get any easier. And unfortunately, we do the same thing when these type of occurrences happen. We do the same thing. We don't want we don't want any rioting. We want peaceful. You get the same attorneys up there. People wearing T-shirts. You get the same people coming on CNN, MSNBC, the same rhetoric, and I'm like, okay, same Negroes marching, and I'm like, okay, and it's just, I mean, we're ill, we're sick to keep doing the same things over and over again. I saw this little PSA. I'm calling it a PSA. It was very deep. You may have seen it before or alluded to it. It was this young black male, and he was on a bus stop, and he was there, and he ended up walking to a doctor's office. And the lady said, "Well, the doctor's closed." He's like, "Oh, well, I guess the doctor came in, and he was like, "Can you remove this?" And he lifted up his shirt, and he had a target on his stomach. Um, and although it was a PSA and everything, and it was heavy, or at least I thought, and the doctor said, "No, I can't remove that." It was a black doctor, right? And so I think those who are in the NBA, and not just the NBA, I'm not picking on them, because I think some of the brothers are well intended, but I think some of these athletes feel as though they can depend on, again, the paternalistic owners, or they could just do, this Black Lives Matter stuff, and that's going to prevent, deaths from, reoccurring. And I'm just like, that's not putting the work in. That's not boots on the ground. That's not, you know, really making sure there's some accountability. And
But what
so,
do you think that? How do you hold people accountable?
well, so here's the thing that I've said, and I see we got a person coming in there, so I'm
Oh,
going.
this is 5. But go ahead.
So here's one of the things that's been said, and a lot of people may disagree with me, but hear me out. So here's one thing that could happen, um, and some of my conservative friends will definitely like this. So there's been talk about defunding the police. There's also been conversations about not having, you know, school resource officers on campus. So I'm going to talk about the
What is a
SRO.
school resource officer? I homeschool. I don't know about that. I've never heard that before.
So the school, the SROs, the school resource officers are there. Now, here's supposed to be their role. They're really supposed to be there, analogous to like an MSW in a social working kind of capacity, to kind of like, and not inform the law, but to let them know about it, not to really be in the draconian police measures that, we often see them in. They're really supposed to be there as an advocate for, the students that are there at the school. So they're not supposed to be in there slamming students and everything. They're really not supposed to be security, right? They're really supposed to be building up relationships and rapport and letting them know about the law. They're really supposed to be a conduit, right, for and to the students there. And here's what I mean by that. So if you have an RSO, right, I mean an SRO on campus, and now we have our students who are walking home in the greater community, that SRO is not just an SRO, but it's a police officer. They should know other police officers, so on and so forth. So they should be able to advocate, you would hope, for those students and be a part of the village, right? Because again,
no, but this is silly to me because it's like, why are your kids in those schools anyway?
Well, I mean, that's an argument that you can make, but a lot of the black kids are still going to go to public schools, So back in the day, we used to have officers that lived in the community. They were actually doing community policing. They were part of the community, right? And they had a relationship. And so from the relationship that they had with the community, students, so on and so forth, they could advocate for when something happened. They could be part of the village. They could have safety nets. These are the type of things that I think can actually happen, but you have to choose the right officer, the one with the right demeanor, the one with the right know-how, the one that connects to the community, right? And so here's what's happening. Here's the argument. People will say, no, we don't need these school resource officers there. We need counselors. And I'll say, okay, I will grant you that. But as a person that has been an educator for several years, 9 times out of 10, the counselor you're going to get is a white female who's not there for the best interest. You know what I mean? Unless she's some bleeding heart liberal. You know what I mean? Unless she's some, what's that movie? All these Michelle Pfeiffer type of, white chicks coming in there again to save the little black inner city kids, but doesn't really care. You're going to get that type of counselor, or you're going to get one that's really scared, the crap out of, she's really scared of black students and will write them up anyway and have the police coming in there and do something draconian to the students. So
this all comes back to me to just our kids shouldn't be in those schools. I guess for me, it's like we have these conversations and it seems like we keep trying to figure out how to make the system work for us with us in it. And I just, what'd you say, Fred?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
How you doing? How you doing, Queen? How you doing, Irene? How you doing, brother Mister?
What's going on, brother?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the chat, Irene. Thank you, brother Mister. I just wanted to interject just one thing. That's and no disrespect, brother Mister, to what you're alluding to, but it really sounds futile, brother. And I think that's what Irene is saying. I mean, to try to incorporate us or our children in this system in any aspect is just futile because this system is a cesspool from top to bottom. It's completely corrupt.
No, I'm not. Listen, as a person that's been in it and still in it to a certain extent, I'm not disagreeing with that. But I'll say this: the majority of our parents and our folks are still going to be in that cesspool, and that's the thing. And I'm saying if they're going to be in there, you have to have some resources for them. That's all I'm saying. I would love for us to have our own schools and just not being there altogether. I mean, just.
But here's the thing. This is the thing, babe. to me, and that's what I think, that's where the insanity comes in, right? Because at the end of the day, first of all, and I'm going to get off track here. Here's a perfect example, right? So there is a kingdom in ancient Ethiopia, and they found a ring there. And the ring was reminiscent of something that the European is familiar with their people wearing in Rome, right? Except for the insignia on the ring was a bull, which is an African insignia. So they said that that civilization obviously copied Rome and then just stuck an African insignia on it instead of saying maybe Rome copied them, right? My point is, this is the kind of thing that they'll teach in the school. When you go into a system that is Eurocentric in nature, the European believes that their greatest export is their culture. And we live in a Western civilization. So when we sit and we have a conversation where we all can agree that the system is wholly corrupt and that there is no functionality within the system because the system is not designed to function for you, it's designed to disseminate Euro culture. But then we say, okay, but most of our people aren't going to engage in revolution. So we're going to live in the system. To me, once you agree to live in the system, you agree to live by the rules of the person that made the system, of the people who run the system. At that point, you're never going to get to this point. So I agree, all of those things would be great that you're saying. I'm saying we're never going to get there because the system is not designed to pander to you. That goes back to my original statement where there's an agenda for everybody but us. There's a specific talking point that only affects every individual group of people that you can imagine in this country, from teachers to illegals to unions to farmers. Everybody's been singled out and an agenda has been set forth that benefits just them, but not Black people, because the system is not designed to make any of the things you're saying work.
Well, here's the thing. There's not going, I'm not in disagreement with any of that. But again, we know there's not going to be a divestment from that system, unfortunately. I mean, some of us want to be just like them. I mean, we say, we could just be like white folks. You know what I mean? Everything would be fine. And that's sickening. And my only argument is like, okay, they're going to be there. How can we have a conduit to get them out of here? Because my only argument is that our people still need support, even in that cesspool that they're in. And so that's just my claim. You know what I mean? Because there are people that, Harry Tubman had to go back and save. There's going to be people that we have to get out of there, or at least show them like, okay, there's an alternative, or help them while they're there. I just don't want to sacrifice them and say, okay, well, you're in the cesspool and just flushing. You know what I mean? That's just my bad.
Absolutely. Can I interject? I just want to make a couple of points. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. and brother, Mr. I'm in agreement with your idealism, because that's an idea, and it's a great idea if we were in a vacuum. But this is reality. So in reality, brother, the inception of the Western world was to subjugate African people and all of their descendants. Okay, so that's a fact. That's brass tack. This is not nothing to argue. That's the Constitution. So with that being said, brother, what you're describing, I don't want to desert any of our people that are working in the cesspool or that are working for quote unquote Europeans. Of course, that's not an option unless they are completely traitors or coons. But to try to incorporate ourselves or to incorporate any type of practice into a cesspool is asinine. Krishnamurti is an Indian, is a Krishnamurti. he's a Indian scholar. He said, and this is very true. He said this about 90 years ago, 80 years ago. He said to try to integrate into a corrupt system. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but basically what he said was that's insanity. It doesn't make any sense, even mathematically. You have to destroy a corrupt system. Nellie Fuller says we have to replace white supremacy with a system of justice. We cannot incorporate into white supremacy and then try to finagle on the inside on how to sabotage it and destroy it. It has to be destroyed. You understand? So we have to get out of the system completely. Our paradigms have to be, any paradigm that we have that is European centered has to be shattered. We got to build from the ground up. And right now, Black Americans, the majority of us, are perpetual children. We're behaving like perpetual children. We're getting slaughtered on camera, and a lot of us are deflecting, or we're not acknowledging it at all, or we're getting emotional, crying on camera, begging to what we think are good white folks. Why is this happening? That's a perpetual child. We cannot operate like that. You understand what I'm saying, brother?
I completely, I just will question that. I'm definitely not arguing, some form of integrationalism. I would have it more of the approach of the spook who sat by the door, because I do think there needs to be some type of infiltration. That's just my personal opinion, and that it does need to be destroyed. But then once it's destroyed, and Irene and I have this argument, and she once you have it destroyed, then what? Because oftentimes we're very mimetic, right? We want to copy the system that we destroyed and just put a black face on it.
Well,
And
not those of, not to cut you off, brother, but not those of us who are scholars or students of scholars. Dr. Professor Amos Wilson wrote the blueprint for black. Wrote the blueprint. He got a whole book, the blueprint for. I'm not quoting exactly, but Professor Amos Wilson laid it out in the book. He's not the only scholar. Dr. John Henry Clark laid it out. We have scholars that have laid out literally in text, in literature, the entire blueprint. So we don't have to copy anything because they're copying us. We have the architectural structure of how we need to govern and be in a black or quote unquote melanated African civilization. But we can't do that under the authority of Europeans. It's not possible. We are diametrically opposed.
no, and no one's saying that we should be under the rulership of Europeans. And yeah, and I'm very familiar with Dr. Amos Wilson as a blueprint, black on black. I mean, all these things. He's one of my favorite scholars. So, but he also said that at the same time we have to make sure that we have the resources, right, and the wherewithal. So, and again, I said this at the outset: our people are ill, right, and so oftentimes when you're dealing with an ill person, you just can't give them you can't do it with cold turkey.
Can you
You know,
define resources too when you get a chance?
you can't do it cold turkey. I mean, when somebody stops them cold turkey, it ends up very bad. And when you tell our people, because we're knowledgeable, so we can have this conversation frankly. But when you tell most of our people that what they're talking about is really not the way to go, because like Dr. Amos Wilson said, we've been conditioned to think that up is down and down is up and right is wrong and wrong is right. And so I'm not in disagreement with what you're saying. I just want to know the ways in which we could do that so we don't leave people behind and we don't have, a multiplicity of casualties from our folks. And again, I don't have all the answers. This is just a suggestion that I have because I'm not an integrationalist at all. I think we have to be separate. And like Dr. Amos will say, we don't have common friends. We have common interests. So my interest is for the benefit of Black folks, unapologetically. unapologetically. And so that may look sometimes, in my opinion, like the spook who sat by the door. Maybe sometimes it looks more revolutionary. Maybe it looks more time, like you say, if they're really coons and everything, we just got to cut them off. Um,
You
so,
got to eliminate them. If they're coons, you got to eliminate them. I apologize for interrupting. If they're
no, go
coons,
ahead,
you
bud.
got to eliminate them. Well, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I'm just saying, there's certain people that, we just have to cut off. But for me, and again, I just go back to me, being in education and seeing babies caught in there because some of our parents are just, the babies might not be coons, but the parents sure might be coons. You know what I mean? I want you to be just like them, and we have to get them out of that stage, and we can't just shock them into it. Sometimes we have to show them brothers like you and show them the literature and everything and get them to that place. But if we just say, hey, your mom was wrong, your daddy's wrong, I think that's going to throw them off. So I'm not in disagreement with you or Irene and everything because we know the system is horrendous and everything. And yes, it can be reconstructed in a way that's based on justice, but it's tough. And I'm not trying to be a naysayer, and while we're doing that, I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that when you said like leaving people behind. I think we have to rethink, like collectively, not just us on this panel, but like as a people, we have to rethink this idea that we're leaving people behind. Some people want to be where they're at. Some people prefer the status that they're in, and they're comfortable there and they don't see a problem with it. So it's not even anybody being left behind. Some people want to be stagnant. Some people are comfortable in their lot. And so that part just is what it is. But I am curious when you talked about resources, specifically like what type of resources? Because this is and I don't know what your answer is going to be, but I hear us saying in order to build, we need to have resources. And a lot of times when we talk about that, we're talking about monetary resources. And is that like what you meant, like money to do things with?
Well, I think that's one resource, and I don't think that's the sole resource. I mean, you and I have had this conversation.
No,
so,
we have. You know all my thoughts. But
yeah. So, I mean, we've had this conversation, but I'm not discounting, money. But I mean, we've had a conversation, and I agree with you. There's bartering.
Well, you know that I do discount money because
I know that you discount money, but I'm saying I don't.
But this is the reason, because you know why I discount it, but everybody doesn't. I discount money as a resource because money is tied to the power of a structure. Money is nothing but a vehicle for barter. A resource to me is land. A resource to me are crops. A resource to me are control over a water supply. Those are resources. And when you have those resources, then you can create money to trade those resources with. But if you're collecting the vehicle for barter of the people who control the actual resources, then you don't have a resource. You have a vehicle for barter.
Well, I think it's unidirectional. I think if you have the money and everything, I think it assists you in getting those things that you're talking about.
Well, if that was the case, we know that this is not the case, though, because if that was the case, Black people would have never been able to be shut out of whole neighborhoods. If all it took was money to acquire the resources or to acquire the things you wanted, we couldn't be systematically shut out of some things. And we know historically that has happened. So we know that money can't solve the problem.
No, but you're simplifying it.
No, I'm not simplifing it because if I want to buy a gold mine, but all the people that own the gold mines are European and nobody's willing to sell me their mine, I will never get it until I take it.
That's brass tacks. That's brass tacks. That's complete truth.
So that's just why I was saying, like, there's a limit to money. I can collect all the money I want, but if the people that control the actual resources don't want to do business with me, right? They're only willing to allow me to acquire so much, and they want to trade within themselves, then it's going to be a problem. Here's a perfect example. So for 12 years, I worked in commercial real estate. A lot of you guys know this. I wasn't a broker or anything like that. I managed real estate portfolios. And all of the people that I worked with that owned properties were from India. When they bought and sold their hotels, they bought and sold them from each other. Nobody got that coin. The only exception was when they did government contracts. That was the only exception. They grandfathered each other in, they gave each other hard money loans. What is my point? My point is that the Asian American Hotel Owners Association has a monopoly on hospitality in America because they only deal with each other.
Group
They
economics.
don't deal with anybody else. That's why they monopolize 80% of hospitality in the country.
So it kind of cut out, so my connection, so I didn't hear all of it, but I've heard it before. But my pushback with that, it's going to be, well, in Black Wall Street, did we not do that? And it came crushing down. We know why it came down, but did we practice this group economics? Didn't we not do the same thing?
We did, brother, Mister. And I just want to chime in one time because Irene she's talking brass tacks. The thing is, see, all we got to look in history. See, the thing is, where we went wrong is all historical. We went wrong. First of all, we were successful in Black Wall Street, in reference to that, and practicing group economics, extremely successful. But we were using the only thing we had, which was a European monetary system. Okay. Now, with that being said, in 2020, it's a paradigm shift. All right, money, American currency or the dollar is not the only form of currency right now, and it's not the dominant form, to be honest. Bitcoin is. But with that being said, Nathan Rothschild said hundreds of years ago, he who controls the issuance of money controls the government. So if they control how the Bureau of Engraving dispenses money, which is fiat, this dollar is fiat. If they control that, then they can, if they can control that, then they can manipulate it, which they are doing. So if they manipulate it, and it's a European space on this dollar that we're talking about, then they can coerce and strategize on how to undermine us with it, which is all. That's all they do. That's the key to their power. Is their monetary system that we have adopted. Now, currently an alternative is Bitcoin. We can debate that, but I can tell you personally, I haven't worked for a white person for 5 years, and that is solely because of Bitcoin. Okay. Now, as far as we are not going to be successful in this system. No matter how we try to intellectualize the strategy, it's not going to happen. It's not. That's mathematically impossible. Okay. If right now we're in a physical war with the white supremacists. The white people who are not white supremacists are not powerful enough to help. So we have to treat it like a war. Right now it's a physical war. So we have to counter it physically. We cannot get around it. There's no voting. I'm not saying you were saying voting. I'm just speaking in general. There's no voting. There's no right now it has to be addressed physically. And it's gonna be casualties of war, and that's gonna happen. After that, we're gonna have to organize and try to change the subconscious mind of our people who are conditioned to, white ice is colder than black. If we can't change their subconscious mind, there's 3 ways to change the subconscious mind or program the subconscious mind: trauma, music, repetition, and symbolism. If we
Mm-hmm.
implement any of those three things to change their subconscious mind, they're they're in the way. We can't work with them because they're gonna be coons by proxy. Even if they don't want to be coons, they're gonna be coons. So and I'm just giving you guys some. I'm speaking in brass tacks. I don't really operate. I try not to operate on my opinion. So I try to use science, truth, and historical record. Our people are perpetual children because their subconscious mind has been programmed to worship European.
No,
Whenever
definitely. No, definitely. I mean, the propaganda is horrible, and it continues to be an issue. I mean, propaganda is part of warfare, right? And so we get that. But I when Irene was talking about her ideals along barter and everything, and my argument was that yes, we need those type of things as well, but we need money too because again, I said it was um, um, multifaceted. Like we need all these things, right? And she was like, "No, if we had money, we just buy our way out." But I'm like, "Okay." I referenced Black Wall Street, but I didn't hear because my internet kind of went spacey on me. But I'm not disagreeing with what she's saying, but I'm like, okay, how are we gonna get to that point? To Brother Five's point, it's like we're you know constantly in this situation where psychologically we have a whole lot of work to do or to undo, right? And so, and a lot of us look at each other. Well, if you have, cash is king, right? And but of course, yeah, I would like to have property because I understand that and I understand what I can do on my property. But again, how are we attaining that property, right? Or are we taking it like I agree with Brother Five? Yes, it's going to have to be by force. You can't just ask somebody if you want something, you have to take it, and either that's taken by force or taken by persuasion or propaganda or a combination of all those things, right? But I I still believe that money will help and
yeah,
Mister, you cut out.
they kind of cut out.
I just think that um I think the
and
problem.
that fight. I'm going out again. To me, that was a simplification of it because we can't just buy our way out of stuff, but we have the mindset, right, to do things. So just this is not a strip club. We just can't make it rain, right, and just get some WAP and it's all over. That's not how it's going to operate. I mean, we really have to put some thought into this and make sure we have a systemic plan that's going to make sure we're in the position that we want to be in. But I don't think just money and just capitalism alone will do it. But I think we are in a capitalist society.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing though. We're in a capitalistic society, but I think it's important to remember that when the Europeans, who have almost no natural resources, needed gold to create their coin for their capitalistic society, they went to Africa and started chopping up people's arms and legs and just took the gold, right? They started with trade and they gained their wealth, right? They gained their wealth through murder. And then after murder was done, then they started to be capitalistic in that society. They established governments. They established.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, but my point in saying this, though, babe, is at the end of the day, that's not how this system was built. It was not built by getting money. It was built by taking resources and then building a capitalistic society over the resources that were stolen.
That they attained, that they stolen, right? And so I get that. But when I was want to interject is that although those things happen, and this is even though we're with our greatness as black folks, Africans, whatever title you want to put on us, right? We were complicit in some of those things too, right? Selling some of our folks off, or whether it's tobacco, alcohol, whatever it was, right?
Yes.
Again, this cinephilic feeling, this benevolence that we had, right? Like, oh yeah, come on in, you know, white folks, come on, settle in on the now and everything, really. And so that doesn't take away, you know, the ilk that these Europeans came in, that mindset that they came in to do the things that they did. But I'm saying that to say we're still doing that same thing today. You know what I mean? We as black folks still have this kind of like, oh, everything's gonna be fine. These white folks would never do any harm to us, and we still trade our own people off. We still stipend our own people off for, and sometimes it's like Brother Five said, it's necessary because we got some coons, but sometimes it's just like, we'll sacrifice that person just for our own self. You know what I mean? Our
Because
own selfish reasons, and that's something that I'm asking the question because I don't have all the answers to. Like, okay, we know these things based on our history as you articulated, but we also have to bring in mind, like, listen, we were complicit in we were complicit into some of those things too. So how do we know? How do we now rectify that with that being in our DNA? And unfortunately, to get to the place we want to be, where we have our resources and we're
it's
not
only
coming
two
to
ways, brother. It's only two ways, brother, mister. It's only two ways, brother. We gotta look at history. Before the Haitian Revolution, Dessalines, he galvanized the Haitians because the Haitians never experienced chattel slavery. He galvanized the Haitians, and he literally said, well, him and the Haitians who were against chattel slavery or the idea of it, they slaughtered, brother, every single Haitian that was a quote unquote coon at that time. They wiped them all out. This is a historical fact. This is not just me talking. This is what they did. They wiped out every single Haitian that was basically coinciding with what the French were trying to do, because at that time it was the French, Napoleon's brother to be exact, and they wiped them out. They slaughtered them. They ended their lives. Then they proceeded to strategize against the French because the French were coming to invade. That's historical record. Now, in reference to our people now today, our people are perpetual children. This really can't even be argued. All you got to do, you can talk to a 30, 40, 50-year-old black person. If they are not quote unquote conscious, they're on the fence, or they're deflecting, or they're like a complete coon. That's the behavioral process of a child. An adult person is not going to operate like that, especially when you're under attack. So if we can't reprogram their subconscious mind, because that is what makes them a child, their subconscious mind, then they gotta go.
Right.
Dark Prophet.
Yeah. Right.
Speak on it.
We listen to Brother Doc.
Wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So my mic was doing my mic was acting up just now. Like, wait, how well can you guys hear me?
Hear you well.
Very good. I can hear you good.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, but uh I guess I could start saying something. Wait, what's your name, sir? I can't see it. It's blocked out by
Uh,
the
five,
chat.
five, five
What
is
is
my
it?
five, like the number five. That's my YouTube handle.
Oh, okay.
Five, red pill,
Um,
B1 combo.
so I have like two or three things loaded up, but I'll make this little comparison, and then I guess I'll get into the first point that I'll make that is my own original point, and then I'll just let the second one just simmer for a little bit. So, you were talking about the Haitian Revolution, and I like to relate things to different stories that I know or remember really well. So when you were talking about the Haitian Revolution, I thought of a quest from basically what was my favorite game of all time. It's called The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. So a quick little lore perspective, and I'm not going to get too deep into it. There's 3 houses. It's basically like a culture that's based off of India. It's sort of like and we're not going to get into that. But there's 3 great houses, and one of them owns slaves. So basically, it parallels apartheid. So while let's call them English because we're relating them, relating the game characters to the real life comparisons. While the English outlawed slavery, there was one of the great houses called the Telvanni, which used slavery almost exclusively. They were the greatest of the great houses, which were like wizards, like 3,000 IQ wizards that were basically omnipotent, but for some reason they loved slavery. So basically, you have the opportunity to join this house, and the very first mission that you get is you're sent to a mine, right? It's like a silver mine or something like that. You're sent to a silver mine, and you're sent to figure out why there's no silver shipments being sent from the mine. So when you get there, there's a leader of a slave revolt, and he says, we stopped shipping the mines because we've decided that we're not going to work for your family anymore. Because basically joining one of the great houses, you're basically assimilated into the family and counted as one of the family. So you become whatever your name is, Telvanni, whatever your name is, Hlalu, whatever the great house is. So this is why this story is interesting to me. You can talk to him, and you only have 2 choices. You can either say that you'll report to your superior and tell them that all of the slaves ran away or whatever, or you can tell him to get back to work and that you're not going to take no for answer. If you say the first one, they'll turn hostile and they'll try to kill you, which the only alternative is to just kill all of them, and the slaves don't work anyway. Or you can let them live, and the slaves don't work anyway. So either way, you don't get the labor anymore because they're either going to be free or die. So here's the funny part of this quest. It's the very first quest in that quest line, but it gives you the strongest item in the game. So if you tell the slaves to get back to work and choose to kill them when they refuse, you get the strongest item in the game. Now, obviously, most people aren't going to pick that option because if they're going to give you the strongest item in the game, they're kind of hoping that you'll have some sort of moral compass to where you'll probably never really get the strongest item in the game. Well, at least the strongest magic-based item. But I think that that's very telling because it says that although there are many benefits to doing the quote-unquote evil route, most people, or at least you would hope most people, would choose not to. So like the quest if you do it the kill the slaves route gives you like this magic ring that can shoot basically just shoot nuclear blasts out of it, and you can just one-shot any enemy, literally one-shot any enemy.
Right. I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, a question, brother Doc. You were describing this game very elaborately. and I kind of get the description. You was describing this game, and you're saying that basically, I guess some of the individuals participating in this game would not choose the quote unquote violent route, or they weren't leaning towards the violent route, and you would like trying to juxtapose that to our current situation. Is that I'm trying to understand?
Okay, so well, I was bringing it around to the Haitian Revolution because I thought there was a few comparisons to be made there. But let me see. I'm bring this one around because I brought up the violent route because, like I was saying, the moral what I took from the quest, because I was an English major in college, so I sort of try and look for the moral of the story in pretty much all things. But the moral of the story was there's benefits to doing the evil route, but you would hope that people don't do the evil route.
But violence is not evil, though.
Well, no, because the violence is your player character. Because this is basically like a hero type game. So
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is kind of off topic, but I can't. I'm sorry. It's like really bugging me. What is this obsession with buying land? Okay, so I hate to get sidetracked. But I just literally I've been wanting to address it. The buying land thing. Y'all, I'm not against buying land. I think for assimilation and, into this society successfully, then you buy land. But get the money, buy the property, produce product, keep the cycle going, and then generate your own currency. I think that when you get to step 5, that's when it stops making sense. The only way you can generate your own currency is to have enough natural assets to have a nation. You have to have a nation. So I'm going to give you a prime example. When we went into the Middle East, we went for the oil. We did not buy the oil. We went in for the oil. When the Pilgrims came to America, they did not buy the land. They took the land. And then once they had control over all the land, they built a country and created a currency. See, the thing is that Uncle Locke, that process is great for surviving successfully in the status quo. But it's got to be so much bigger than can ever be, because nobody's going to let you take over their country, okay, with land purchases. This is what's not going to happen. And with eminent domain, this is what will never happen. Facts. What absolutely has to happen is it has all think about South Africa. The whites that don't want to leave South Africa did not become wealthy and acquire that land because anybody purchased it. This is just not how it goes down. But we've been so heavily conditioned to play the game and not toss the board. Facts. That we honestly think that we can jump from playing the game to just suddenly being a nation. You can't create your own currency without massive control over a huge plot of land. Think country-sized. You can't do that. You can't purchase your way there. Because first of all, purchasing land, the land is never actually yours. It's never yours. It's always taxed by the people who it really belongs to. It's always under eminent domain, at least in this country. The only way that anybody has ever jumped from acquisition to currency creation is with violence. I challenge anybody to present me one country that has ever been established that was not through bloodshed. Just one. If you can name one, we can follow that blueprint. If you could pick one country out of all of the countries on earth that was fully established without bloodshed,
They can't. No one can do it.
then we can follow their blueprint and y'all will be good. But until then, I need you to understand that anything short of that is not going to get you to where you think you're going. It's only going to allow you to compete within the status quo. And I'm not saying I have a problem with that. I'm just saying that we can't be delusional. I'm just saying that, look, you're either going to stay in the status quo and compete competitively and do the best you can in this system, or you're going to have to get on the page of everybody else who has a country.
That's a fact. Can I say one thing, sister?
Yeah.
What Sister Irene said, that's brass tacks. That's pure facts. What we're trying to do, because a majority of our people are perpetual children, we're trying to avoid what is obvious. We can't garner any type of justice without physical violence. It's not possible. This cesspool swamp that they call America was established with physical violence. You can't counter that without physical violence. This is just universal law. 1 + 1 = 2. Everything else that we're doing and talking about it's not math. It doesn't add up. Right now, we're in a physical war. We cannot counter that without engaging in a physical counter. It's in Sun Tzu's book. Before Sun Tzu, if you study Shaka Zulu, Shaka Zulu said it. Queen Nzinga said it. The Ethiopian king who bought the guns and ran off the Europeans who was trying to conquer the Ethiopians at that time. This is just universal law. We can't get away from this, and we have to not be afraid of what we call death. That's why we have to study metaphysics. Those of us who are conscious have to study metaphysics and study chemics, because death is not the end all be all. Death is freedom. This is what the Haitians understood. That's why they said they had to chant. I can't quote it right now, but they weren't afraid of death. In the Haitian Revolution, and they built that citadel, that castle on top of a mountain, and they surrounded it with cannon, and they built it on a mountain for a reason, a strategic warfare reason, because they wanted to see when the French and the Portuguese were coming, and when they seen them coming, if they could not eliminate all of them with the cannons, then they would scorch earth theory, a scorched earth strategy, meaning they will burn down everything below the citadel because it was built on a mountain and there was forest under it. They burned everything down. It's called the scorched earth war strategy. But they weren't afraid of death because they understood that death is not the end all be all, because they was connected to their African spirituality, which was the voodoo. You understand what I'm saying? So we got a lot of work to do, but if we don't understand that our paradigm has to be shattered, this is a war. We cannot be afraid of death. I am not afraid of death personally.
No, I agree with Five saying. I mean, the art of war. What I would say in that regard, definitely, the bloodshed is definitely going to be necessary. But I also agree that we need to have a multiplicity of approaches because we should never let our enemy know exactly what we're going to do at a given time. And I'm pretty sure you could agree with that. But we shouldn't take anything off the table. And we damn sure shouldn't cool down and everything and acquiesce to, massa, right? And I'm just thinking we should learn from our great, warriors and our sister warriors and everything and know how we need to approach this, right? But I want to circle back to the emphasis of this conversation or where it stemmed from. So again, we know we're in this environment where brothers primarily and sisters too, but brothers primarily are still being targets, right? Um, primarily by rogue cops, and of course, we could go into the conversation about us hating ourselves and everything, and that has merit too, right? But we were talking about these rogue cops and how some of these need to grows feel as though, again, they could just have a mantra, or they could just have rows painted, right? Or they could just have all these white liberals come save the day, and that everything was going to be, taken care of. And when that reality, when that false reality, right? That pipe dream, you know, when it burst, now they're in their feelings, you know, and so kind of like going back to that original premise of this conversation, it's like, Irene alluded to it. We can never have anything unapologetic that's specific that's going to be for us unless we design it for us. And so I'm in agreement with that. But my pushback was this illusion is that we constantly think that other folks are going to do it for us. And so that's not going to work. I mean, so Kyrie Irving, brother played from the Brooklyn Nets. He said we need to start our own league. He got so much pushback. Stephen A. Smith came after him. Other people came after him. Oh, that's stupid. You shouldn't start your own league and everything. I mean, there's been conversations about that for years, right? I mean, because the makeup of the NBA, hell, for that matter, the makeup of the NFL. And so own leagues could be established. Heck, we did have our own leagues prior to, major baseball league and everything. We did have that, right? And some of the pushback that Jackie Robinson gives is that, he was one of those that, integrated, right? Broke the color barrier. Because before that, we did have our leagues and they were doing well. So it's not something that we have not done. It's a situation where a lot of us are comfortable, you know what I mean, with these white billionaires giving us these checks and everything. And we don't want to give up that money for massa, right? Again, the ice is cooler. And so it's interesting. I was having this conversation with a colleague today, talking about some of our professional endeavors. Like, listen, you could do A, you could stay in, be comfortable, work, get your pension and everything. You could be fine. Or you could do B. It's a risk a little bit, but you could write your own checks again. You know what I mean? Where you could hire your own folks. You know what I mean? That we could be in partnership. And a lot of times people don't want to venture out to B because A is so cool. And so when I'm looking at this current environment that we're in, and targets are still on the front and backs of Black folks and everything, and we still dependent on,
Hello?
You there, bro?
it's the NBA players. I mean, they were crying. They were really upset. I'm like, y'all Negroes really thought that just because y'all have Black Lives Matter on the freaking hardwood, that was going to stop a police from shooting a brother.
Because they're $40 million slaves, brother. It was a book
Yes,
called the $40 million.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. $100 million. Some cases. And they think that their social justice advocacy work is really doing something. They really think that, okay, you took off 2 days and you were in your feelings talking about we should take off the whole. I'm like, listen, really? I mean, that's really pissed me off. I'm like, y'all really upset and y'all really thought y'all were actually doing something. That's the thing. You really thought that you were doing something. And now you're pushing back on the owners. Y'all got to do more. Well, the owner's family is not getting shot by police officers. The owners, they don't have to worry about the stuff that, we are exhibiting on a daily basis. They don't have that trauma. We do. So why we're going to put it in the hands of other people to save us? And so that's why
it's funny that the rebellion is we're not going to entertain you. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're not going to entertain you today. You know that buck dance I was going to do? No, I'm taking a break from that. I just think it is a joke. It's a joke. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to get off track long, but I just want to say, I just want to be clear that we keep trying to have two discussions. And for me, the most frustrating part for me is I just need Black people to pick a side and stand there. So, for example, it's like I was saying, what about starting our own communities, or, the basketball player, whatever kind of player he is, that wants to own his own team? Okay, that's a different conversation. It's like, um, are we trying to function the best we can? And this ties into what Whitney was saying, which is Black people just want to feel safe and be able to eat. If that's your goal, is to have a comfortable house and to feel safe and to go about your life unbothered, and you don't want anything more than that, like you will stay within this system if that can be the goal, if that can be what you can achieve. That is one conversation. Then, you know what, have your own basketball team. Let's open up an ADOS town or a Pan-African town, whatever y'all want to do. Okay, if that's the conversation we're having, that's one conversation. But then I need all this tantrum throwing to stop. Then let's just get to assimilating properly, people. Otherwise, the other conversation is revolution. I think the most frustrating conversation to me is people keep talking out of both sides of their faces. It's like, are you assimilating? Are we just trying to play the game the best we possibly can? Or are you having a revolution? Like, which one do you want to do? Like, I was really irritated. That couple, the crazy couple in Missouri that like pulled out their guns, and well, they weren't crazy, but pulled out their guns and stuff. I felt they did the right thing, because I was more frustrated with who busts into a gated community and then busts down somebody's gate only to stand outside and yell at their house. Like, you're schizo to me. If I break into your gated community, it's on. I didn't come there to yell and pick it outside your house. That's not what I did that for. So this schizo kind of behavior, everybody's got to go like half revolutionary, but really just want to integrate, like a kid throwing a tantrum. That kind of stuff is more frustrating to me than anything. I'm not going to entertain you now, but I'll entertain you if you do what I want. It's like, dude, assimilate or don't. And I think that's what we need to come to a consensus as a people. Are we assimilating? Because if we're assimilating, then we need to talk about how we can function in their schools, how we can, capitalize in the society, building businesses with each other. That's one side. And then I think the only other comment I kind of had sitting on my tongue is Haiti, they liberated themselves, but they didn't know how to build a darn thing.
They did, sister.
Well, here's the thing. They did not accomplish it. They didn't. And the reason I say they didn't is because as many Black countries who have liberated themselves, and it hasn't just been Haiti, the problem is that they don't know how to be self-sufficient with trade and things like that.
Can I say, please?
Well, but their government was infiltrated many times. There was so much corruption. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Sister Irene, you're on point, but this is where you're misinformed, and that's not a shot. It's just a lot of us are misinformed sometimes without study. The Haitians, first of all, were geniuses, especially on a structural level. They were, after the Haitian Revolution, they were making so much money with sugarcane, cotton, and I think it was another it was some type of bean. They were making so much money, and they were trading with a couple of countries that at the same time it was still chattel slavery in the United States of America, and Thomas Jefferson became the president. Right before the Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson understood, along with his conglomerate, they understood that what the Haitians was doing was so powerful because they was developing a kingdom. The Haitians built the citadel, Queen Irene, with no European involvement. Look up Citadel. That's a castle built on a mountain.
But Haiti is fallen, so
I'm gonna tell you why. Queen Irene, this is why they failed. Thomas Jefferson enacted trade embargoes on any country that was doing business with Haiti. So they economically undermined Haiti. They stopped them from being able to make money.
Okay,
That's my
that is just what that's exactly what I was saying though, is that they did not know, and this is what the movement behind the Petro-Caribe deal was, but then Haiti's government is so corrupt they still couldn't take advantage of it, is that they didn't know how to function outside of the reach of the European arm. They didn't. That's why they fell. Now, Cuba, Venezuela, Russia, and a couple of other countries, along with Haiti, recently tried to function outside of the European arm. That meant cutting down the central banks. That meant not doing trade with European countries at all, with the exception of Russia, and only doing trade amongst themselves, which is why we're trying to overthrow all these countries and cause coups and things like that. But that is the part that I'm talking about, is the thing that nobody has mastered, no Black people that have liberated themselves have mastered, is what was attempted through Petro-Caribe, which is knowing how to function on this earth when most of the earth is westernized. Most of the earth has a European arm attached to it. Nobody has figured that out. So the revolution is one thing, but being able to function and trade, because we're in a global society, being able to do all that, although Haiti's situation is unique too, because they did not have the climate to be self-sustaining. Trade was necessary for them to sustain themselves. So doing that without being able to be cut off by Europe, because they're not the only ones Europe cut off. There are several African countries too that the Europeans simply cut off once they liberated themselves. So this is how the ball rolls.
Yes, you're right, Queen. You're right, Queen. You're right. I want to make a statement, but you're right.
So here's what I was going to say, not regarding Haiti or anything like that, regarding your point about assimilation. What conversation are we having? A or B. Here's the sad reality. A lot of those people are, like, again, going to the title of this panel, they're disillusioned. They're actually thinking that they're actually radical. You know what I mean? But they're really, under this assimilation framework. You know what I mean? You're still under the eyes. You're still under the power and the prowess of your great white master. And so you think that you're actually doing something. I told them that, they need to do something more about this. We need to get these arenas open so these people come and vote. I told them, I'm like, okay, you really think that's moving the needle? And so the sad reality is that you raise a good point, but a lot of people can't see that those two things are bifurcated. They see it as symbiotic, like, oh, no, I am being radical. I got this white person to do this. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I got them to do that. Okay. So that's where we are right now. And we can't have it like that. We have to be unapologetic in the ways we're moving. We have to depend on us to do the things that need to be done for us. And that's not where it is. Because again, this xenophilic notion that we have, the xenophilic orientation that, hey, everybody can come on in, all lives matter, kumbaya, you could be any which way, as long as you have a Black Lives Matter sign, it's okay, and you're down for the cause. And really, but none of them have heard about interest convergence, right? None of them have heard about the only reason why these white folks are doing this is for their own bottom line, that it looks good politically, right? And they're making money on the back end because you're still ultimately the commodity that they're using to make their billions. And so no one's having that real conversation. And so these young brothers and everything that are supposed to be quote unquote woke, right? And, really being social justice advocates. And I'm like, brother, that's not it. And then you get upset when these white folks do what they're naturally going to do what's in their best interest. And then you start claiming foul. Really? They're doing they're doing what's organic to them. We're not. We're the people not doing what's organic to us and in our best interest. And that's the sad thing. So when you bring up a good point, Irene, when you're talking about we're having two conversations, but for some of us, it's not two conversations. It's one because they
Fact,
don't see it as such.
big facts. And I just want to interject this because that's very true. And I see the dichotomy with the two conversations. I see it in real life and I see it in social media. But I've already identified what the problem is, and I just use history and I use our scholars. Uh, there's a group of black people, melanated people, who believe that technology and quote unquote civilization um, has been developed and from Europeans, and you need a European to sustain it. That's the first problem right there. That's one of the main problems right there, because that's completely false. Even down to electronics or electricity, period. That's completely false. A European did not develop or present to the human race how to manipulate electronics or electricity or none of that. So, and that's just one level. But we have a certain sector of our people that believe that you need Europeans to quote unquote be civilized and to have technology. That's the first problem. The second problem is another group of our people who are quote unquote conscious or aware um, are not a conglomerate, meaning we're not organized enough to implement a fight. Now, when I say a fight, I do not see we speak in revolution and we're using the paradigm of the 60s and the 70s. If you read Neely Fuller's United Independent Compensatory Concept for Victims of Racism, and this is scientific. We do not need to be acting in a revolutionary manner with a bunch of us invading some quote unquote government building or nothing like that. We have to be independent, and the only thing that connects us is a code. That code is the United Compensatory Code, which is we are dedicated to justice. So, with that being said, 50 or 100 black people with guns don't need to be trying to storm down on identified white supremacist organization. That's suicide. We have to be acting independent, meaning me, you, all of us on this panel who are dedicated to justice and seeing justice for our people, because we're under terrorism. We have to be acting independently. So if we have to eliminate race soldiers that we have identified that are terrorizing our people under impunity, then we have to do that independently, like Micah Johnson did, or like Christopher Dorner did, or like Gavin Long did. That's what has to happen. We can't be trying to group with each other and have a leader, because they kill leaders. And once a leader falls, then everything else is done. But they can't kill an idea. And when you study history and you study any population of people who were terrorized by Europeans, those who ran them off, like I'm gonna use those in the Middle East, for example. When the Europeans came in, the Europeans in this country came in to get their oil, right? They created propaganda. They sent in economic hitmen, because that's how they do it first. You get the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It was laid out. They come in with a military, and then they come in with military contractors, which are private, who operate outside of what the UN war treaty is, and they murder, rape, and terrorize these people. Now, what the people in the Middle East did, specifically Afghanistan and Iraq, they were so terrorized that they galvanized under their quote unquote religion, and they learned what they were taught actually, but they mechanized and weaponized explosives, and they went to the extreme. They put bombs on themselves and blew everybody up because they were that's a people who their back was so against the wall that it was all or nothing. Just like the kamikaze in Japan. The kamikaze in Japan, Europeans were subjugating them after the opium wars, and they said, okay, well, F this. We're going to get in these planes. We know we're outnumbered, outgunned. We're going to get in these planes, and we're just going to fly the planes into their their boats. Suicide missions. But it's all or nothing because they understood that you have to be engaged in that, and they did it independently. Nobody knew that Pearl Harbor was going to happen the way it happened. Nobody knew that individual Japanese planes were going to be flying into boats and blowing them up. They had no idea because they was independently acting. Nobody knew that these quote unquote terrorist organizations were going to be strapping bombs to themselves with C4, RDX, and Semtex and blowing things up because they didn't group themselves together and say we're going to do this. They was acting independently, and their code was their religion, but they had a code. If we don't do that, we're going to continue to be terrorized. It's not going to stop. They're ramping it. They are steadfast in their terrorism against us. They're not going to stop. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I agree. And circling back around to just this delusion that we're in, and the illness that is our illusion of progress, I think we really have to start living in reality. And, I think so many of our people, I don't know what they're reaching for. I'm confused as to what.
That's going to be hard. Just to cut you off, that's going to be hard when you say we need to start living in reality. And five, you know what I mean by this, because Dr. Emmett Wilson always said that, and it's so true that everything's turned upside down. You know what I mean? And so when we tell our brothers and sisters endearingly, like with love, hey, this is not where it is. We actually should be doing B instead of C. They, especially if it's against whom they consider their master, right? Who they consider to be the highest of the high, the fatherly, this paternalistic figure. You can't say anything against them, right? Especially when they're waving they fans and has the white Christ on it and everything. What can you say to those folks, because they're so disillusioned that, and again, it's kind of like what Five said earlier. I mean, come to a point, do we have to start offing some of them? Because I agree, I want some answers, because I don't know, because I know we have to get out of this illusion, but some of us think that it's actually reality, and we're telling them like, no, that's not it. It's like this matrix, right? They're like, no, everything is good. It's like, no, bro, it's really not. Sister's not. And again, if you tell them something counter to, especially older ones, right? Especially, older of our brothers and sisters. I think the younger ones, again, that's why we talked about the education earlier, and to my point, let's not try to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I think we can save some of those babies, right? Because we have less, unlearning. They have less unlearning to do within them, but their parents and everything, it may be too far gone for them, right? Because again, their reality is this illusion, right? And so again, I'm throwing it out to anybody on the panel. How do we kind of do that? I mean, it circles back to my original question, because we are in this situation where people think that up is down and right is left, and it's just a mess.
Yeah.
Great point.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that was a great point. I was waiting for anyone else on the panel to chime in. That's a great point, though. I mean, I have something I want to chime in, but I want to hear our other people on the channel, on the panel.
Dark, what are you doing?
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Wait, just give me like 2 minutes.
Okay.
No problem, brother. No problem, brother. Dog. Yeah. So, okay. Let me just say one thing, real quick. And everything you said, brother, uh, Mister was on point, and it's a huge topic of frustration for us. Um, but again, we when you operate in brass tacks, which is just basically cut and dry, basically mathematics. We got to use 1 + 1 = 2. So those of our people who are, they're programmed on a subconscious level to a point where they're not operating in reality. And there's a lot of our people that are operating like that. We cannot. We it's nothing we can say to them, brother, Mister. If we can't kidnap them, so to speak, and reprogram their subconscious mind, because that the problem is in their subconscious. The problem is not what we can say to them or what book we can give to them, or even if they see one of their offspring murdered. The problem is in their subconscious mind. That's the problem. So if we can't reprogram it with trauma or music and repetition or symbolism, then it's nothing we can do. They're basically in the way.
And it's sad, brother, as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about it, because there's been this motif, right? There's been this reoccurrence, for several years, right? Even hundreds of years of us being targets, right? Us being lynched, us being shot, us all these types of atrocities that have been waged on our bodies, right? We've always been this collateral damage, right? You know what I mean? We've always been that part of this equation where our dead bodies start this conversation. But notice it's just a conversation that doesn't go anywhere because, again, we keep falling for the banana in the tailpipe. And again, listen to you, it's just like, man, we have been, we've been programmed, but we've been programmed to do the same song and dance over and over and over again. I'm listening again, I'm not taking I just don't want to, take ad homs at, the brothers or the sisters of the WNBA or any sports organization for that matter. But again, we really believe that just kneeling, during the flag, during the Pledge of Allegiance, we really think that we have these sayings. We really think if we cover a street with Black Lives Matters and signs are everywhere, and now people are singing "Kumbaya," and all this white guilt money is going, around like wildfire, and that it's a new time. We're making movements. People really do believe that, and I'm just like, wow. But like you said, they're not looking at the history. What has happened
They're
over
just
and over again.
not to cut you off, brother. It's just
Right?
they're just they're just perpetual children. In the 1700s, brother, I read a slave narrative from a slave narrative, which is a journal from a slave from the 1700s. He was quoting his slave owner. I believe his slave owner probably heard it from another more successful slave owner. Maybe it might be Willie Lynch. Who knows if he even existed? But what he said was paramount. When I heard Bobby Hemmett say it, and then I Googled it and I couldn't find it. But I went on DuckDuckGo and I found it. What they said was, what the slave was a Louisiana slave owner. He said, let us make a slave. To make a slave is to make a perpetual child. That's what he said. That was I read it 6 or 7 years ago. That was so paramount for me because as you we see it in everyday life with our people. They are perpetual children. Anytime you are kneeling and you're under terrorism, that's a child. Okay. Anytime you're talking about voting for people that you don't even know, people that someone else presented in front of you, that's a child. That's a that's the mind of an individual who is looking for a parent to bring them a solution. Our people are perpetual children by and large.
I've returned, by the way. Just putting that out there. Wait, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, brother Doc.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay.
So our people are perpetual children. I mean, this can't even be argued. Look at how we're operating under terrorism. This is sheer terrorism. I mean, they're killing children. I mean, Tamir Rice got killed under the Obama administration. That's a 12-year-old black child with a toy gun. He was gunned down by a race soldier in broad daylight, and our people, they had no response other than kneeling, asking why, or some type of emotion. That's a child. Our people are perpetual children. Majority of us.
Well, might I have the floor for a second?
Yes, sir. We listen, brother.
Okay. I wanted to make a little bit of a note on the on what we were talking about earlier. Well, what Irene was talking about earlier about the two questions: do you want assimilation, or do you want revolution? So what I think is going on, I don't know what to refer to it as, so I'm just going to call it as I'm just going to call it the black id or something like that, because I'm really iffy on I'm really iffy on saying that all black people have a like a unified mind and all black people think a certain type of way. So I'm really hesitant to say black people think X, but just going off of the generalization of, you know, what we know the black community to be, let's just assume that that's what I'm talking about. So what I've seen is that black people want to keep their identity, but they also want the benefits of white society. So they want to have they basically want to have the true representation of separate but equal. And I think there's a few things that play into that. I was talking to one of my friends earlier, and he said something that was that I thought was really funny. And I'm not sure if he was joking or if it was something that he actually thinks. But me and him were making a bit of a skit, right? So I was talking to him as if I was like some slave owner from like the 1800s. You know, like Django, that scene where you remember the scene from Django where they're riding on, like, where the white KKK members were riding on Django and the doctor. Yeah, we were basically doing something like that. And he said something that I thought was kind of funny. He said the white man treats the black woman better and the black man can't compete. And I thought, and I'm pretty sure that that was a joke, but I thought that that was something that was kind of telling. Because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the idolization of whiteness. So I think that there's both an idolization of whiteness, a subconscious idolization of whiteness, and a sort of envy of that whiteness whenever the individual black person doesn't quote unquote measure up to that. So there's sort of lashing out at the perception of whiteness being a greater thing. So essentially, the issue that I see is I think that the people that protest, quote, they want to be white. They want to have the life of whiteness, but they're strapping their inability to have a quote unquote white life. They're strapping that onto the idea that they're black. So I think that there's two different conversations to have
It's
that
the same conversation.
diverge from the two questions.
It's the
Wait, were
same
you asking me
conversation.
something?
I apologize. It's the same conversation, brother, but you're hitting on all cylinders. You're right. It's the same conversation though. Black people or melanated people in America are operating with a European mind, by and large. If European software, and that's how they operate. Think of the mind like a computer. They're operating from a European software in the body of a melanated person or African. So they are in conflict. So everything they do is going to be basically ass back.
Well, yeah, because you can't have. Okay, I'll say it like this. I believe that there's a nature of people, and I believe that there's something that people are taught. So, and Irene's gonna know about this because I almost always do this every time I'm on a line. Every time I'm on a live, I quote Thomas Jefferson, or mention something that he wrote or spoke on. So he and John Adams had this correspondence, that are now called the notes on Jefferson's letters to John Adams or something like that, where essentially it's like 5 months of correspondence between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson in like 1807, where they're basically talking about what's supposed to be in the Constitution and all that other stuff. And Thomas Jefferson says, well, no, I think John Adams brings up the point first, but Thomas Jefferson elaborates on the point. So John Adams brings up the idea that there's a quote unquote natural aristocracy. And this isn't new because I've said this on
Hogwash.
Hmm? Wait, what?
I apologize. I apologize, brother, for interrupting you. But
Okay.
What John Adams said, or what you quoted that he said, that's complete hogwash. And anything Thomas Jefferson said in reference to the Constitution, how they should navigate with it, it's going to be hogwash because the Constitution they plagiarized from Africans who were the Iroquois. But I'm listening to you because we got to have the conversation.
Well, yeah. So, so what John Adams said was that there's a natural aristocracy amongst men, and that there are people that are essentially born to have a high place in society, and people who are born to admire those people. And everyone sort of has a subconscious hardware towards either one. And that the purpose of government, and this is where the diversion from European government to the American government is supposed to come in. It's not chosen arbitrarily by, a royal caste system, but by the natural inclination for people to follow and the natural inclination for people to lead. And like I said, the theory is that this is in people's innate nature, that they're either followers or leaders.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I have a question, brother, because I understand the premise that you're describing, and it's pretty much. I mean, the quote unquote founding fathers, which they're not my founding fathers, but they outlined this. They outlined this in Manifest Destiny, but the quote unquote natural selection of followers and leaders, they were adopting what they were running from, which was the European monarchy, the English monarchy. When they got to America, they understood that monarchies creates jealousy when you're trying to govern a population of people. So they adopted Nicolas Machiavelli's scheme or system of how to govern people. Okay, you got to get the book called The Prince, and you have to study Niccolo Machiavelli, and it's not really hard to do. And what they understood was, first of all, like I said, monarchies create jealousy, quote unquote, royalty, king and queen. That creates jealousy when you're trying to control a population of people. That's why they fled Europe. Every single quote unquote founding father was a felon from Europe. They were fleeing felons. This is a fact. George Washington, who was the first quote unquote president, he was a land swindler. He stole all the land he had from Europeans, and that's why they gave him the presidency, because he owned more land than anyone else. But to the point I'm trying to make is this: that pseudo concept of some humans are leaders and followers, that's pseudo, and what they use to characterize a leader and a leader and a follower was first just basically Europeans who had the most money, juxtaposed to Europeans who didn't. And they tried to end that, and they was working that out in the system. But then Baker's rebellion happened because Europeans were indentured service as well as Africans. But Baker's rebellion happened, which was Europeans siding with Africans or Moors, indigenous Americans, and was fighting against them. So then they realized, okay, now we need to classify a race. So that's when they started the whole racial construct of white, black, and that type of thing. But and I'm gonna let you finish because you're hitting on all cylinders. But what you have to understand, brother, is that when your premise is European off top, like if you're quoting Thomas Jefferson and John Adams without quoting before them, like if you quote the Constitution and you do not know about the Iroquois, which is what they stole the concept of the Constitution from, then you're going to be confused.
Well, because I'll say this. I'm not gonna dispute a whole different things because I do thoroughly disagree with some of the things that you said.
What was that?
But I think for the sake of having a conversation and the sake of expediency, you can't just go throughout the entire history of every idea, because everyone feeds off of past ideas. So if I were to go throughout history and find, well, like you mentioned, but Machiavelli, if I were to say Machiavelli says this and Machiavelli says that, then that's getting into teaching people, like college courses and all that other stuff.
But Niccolo Machiavelli, brother, is what Western political science is based on, from top to bottom. This is not my opinion, brother. This is how they operate right now.
Well, yes, but at the same time, I don't think that all of the things that I'm mentioning can be traced back to Machiavelli, if that makes any sense. So if I quote something from Thomas Jefferson, I'm not going to have a quote that is as efficient to use in conversation that may be applied to Machiavelli. Because I'll put it like this. It's the difference between a well-known quote from a philosopher versus a 18th century literature textbook. Like, you're not going to quote the entire textbook to try and have a general conversation.
True.
You're going to tell them the quote. Like,
I'm talking about the paradigm, brother. Dog. I'm talking about the paradigm. We got red and blue, Democrat and Republican, right? A lot of our people think that that's two different factions, but it's not.
Oh, of course.
It's the same thing. And if you study Niccolo Machiavelli and how he's an Italian, how he established as a political diplomat in Italy, and how the forefathers of this country adopted everything, his whole system, it's exactly the same. So I'm not talking about quotes, I'm talking about a paradigm. This is how they're operating.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll say like this, because I've been on this panel a few times and maybe you haven't heard me, so I'm not gonna fault you for not knowing enough about like my personal philosophy to know, how I come to certain conclusions. But and I was getting to this when I mentioned Thomas Jefferson, because the preface, I was merely prefacing with the natural aristocracy thing, because the natural aristocracy is a subset of natural law. So natural law, and this is something that Thomas Jefferson mentions in, wait, what is it? Oh, which one was it? I think he does mention it in the Declaration of Independence, but I know that he explicitly wrote about it. That's neither here nor there. But natural law is the sort of father of all quote unquote natural things. So essentially what natural law is, the idea that
natural law is a racist ideology.
Not necessarily, because natural law is only the belief that God has a certain God has set principles, and those principles are built into the very foundation, not only of man, but of everything in the universe.
What God?
So it's not, I don't necessarily know how natural law is a racist principle, because like I said, natural law is essentially just the idea that God made Earth, and that Earth has nature, and that therefore all things that men do have some sort of nature that can be understood.
What God? What God?
Well, the God of Abraham. I don't necessarily say I don't say like, because personally,
just what you said right there ties it to being inherently racist, and it's false. It's completely false. Universal law is based on science. Everything down here, I apologize if I'm interrupting, brother, but I have to. Just off that right there, the paradigm is shattered, it's false, and anything else is confusion. There is no God of Abraham or none of that. We are in the third dimension that we call Earth, and everything is dictated by frequency, vibration, and lights.
Wait. Don't go philosophical. Don't do it. It's too early in the morning.
I'm not talking about that's science. That's science. That's science.
Can I throw us off track here? Only because I've got to go to bed. But I want you guys to give like your final thoughts, but I do want to just touch on two things before we all like say goodnight. Yes, I agree, Ox. Dark does have a soothing voice. Mr. was actually saying while you were talking that you sound like my eldest son. Which I don't think you sound like him, but I think you guys have the same like
resonance.
Yeah. So Whitney Titus, I think, really hit the nail on the head. She said, we are European culturally, though, so we think just like them. And I think we must recognize we are European culturally. And whether people like that or not, we live in a Western nation. We are educated from a Eurocentric standpoint. Our entertainment, everything around us is controlled by Europeans. So we are culturally European. Now, as we get older and people try to assimilate African culture into them and into their lifestyles, and I think that's fine, but at our core, from a young child up, we are reared culturally European. And we have to understand where that indoctrination is so we can think past it. I think recognizing that and understanding it so that you can think past that indoctrination is really important. And then two of the young ladies, Muslim Girl and Olivia, were bringing up the difference between whites and blacks. Now, I think everybody on the panel may have different views on this. I will say for me personally, I don't think skin color, Like literally the color of a person's skin dictates what kind of person they're going to be.
It does, and I can explain
Wait,
the
wait,
scientific.
wait, you can disagree with me, but I'm just saying, when I see a white baby and a black baby or a light baby and a dark baby, I don't think that there's something innate there that guarantees that those children are going to come up some way. I think that a lot of that is culture. And so when Olivia brought up what happened in Liberia, that is a huge thing I think we have to recognize is we tend to pattern our behavior and our ideologies off of what Whitney was saying, us being culturally European. So what I mean by that is this idea of dehumanization of other people. Literally, sometimes when I listen to pro-Black people, they sound just like racist white people. They say we have tails, we say they have tails. They say we're not human fully, we say they're not fully human. They say we're animals, we say they're animals. It's like literally the same thing, but with a Black face. So I think a lot of this is cultural. We have adopted a lot of the ways. I would never look at a newborn white baby or newborn Black baby and think I know what person they would become. But I definitely think that culturally speaking, there are differences. And those differences are because there is a different life experience for Blacks and whites. And even if you grow up with the opposite experience, like if a white person grows up solely with Black people or a Black person grows up solely with white people, society will check your place. Society will let you know where you belong because it's heavily ingrained. So any philosophical conversations we could have about there not being a difference between us become irrelevant in light of how the world works. So theoretically, I would say people are people, theoretically. In practice, there are differences.
Fact, can I just
Yeah,
make one
for
comment?
sure.
Yes, Sister Irene, and I want to thank you again for allowing me on the panel, and Brother Doc, I appreciate our discourse, and also Brother Mister, and peace to everybody in the chat. And this is what I want to say, and this is brass tacks. Don't take my word for it. Don't believe anything I'm gonna say. Just do the research. There is a scientific difference and a genetic difference between a Caucasian and an African and an Asian or any other race. There's a genetic and a scientific difference. The difference is melanin, neuro, and eumelanin. Eumelanin is carbon. It's 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. Asians and Caucasians are Rh positive, meaning they, in their DNA genetic strand, they have rhesus monkey blood. Africans do not. Okay? This is not me. I'm not just making this up. I'm not just some pro-Black pseudo scholar. This is pure science. You can Google this. With that being said, that does not dictate how a European or Asian is going to live their lives. But what it does do is it makes them more susceptible to low frequency energy from the cosmos that will possess them to do things that are inhumane. Black people, people of melanin descent, or African people, even though our pineal glands are calcified, we are less susceptible to being under a low frequency vibration from the cosmos. In religion, they call it spirits and demons. All it is it's all see, they made it spooky. It's science, vibration, frequency, light. which translates into magnetism. That's all everything is. White people or whatever race of people who are not 666 positive, 666 positive, but they're Rh positive, which is the rhesus monkey, they are more susceptible to being possessed by negative, low vibrational frequencies from the cosmos. That's the difference. We can be possessed, and a lot of us are, because of the food, the diet, and the environment. But that's the inherent difference. We have an inherent genetic difference, and we're diametrically opposed. And this is obvious in the behavior and especially sexuality. It's obvious. This is not pseudoscience. This is real science. This is real facts. So I'm just going to interject that, and don't believe me. Just research it. The panel, research it for yourselves, guys.
I think we should have another conversation on this, only because I don't want to get into it now because it's so early in the morning, only because there are populations of people that are Black that Rh factor affects. So that's why I think it would be an interesting conversation, because I feel like that kind of goes down the path of the same kind of path of when we talk about Neanderthal DNA, but there are Black populations with Neanderthal DNA. So
they were mixed.
I'm sorry?
Only if they were mixed.
No, there are Black populations with Neanderthal. And then the question then becomes, then when we talk pure genetic, well, we can't get into that now, but what we should definitely do, because I think we could have a really fascinating conversation on this, is we should definitely do a whole separate live stream just on that topic. Because I think I would love to talk about that, and not even to challenge your points, just to open up a dialogue, because I think a lot of people hear about those things, but they're never fleshed out in a clear and concise conversation. So I think that would be amazing if you want to do that for us to do, because I don't think we can do it. This is too early in the morning, y'all, for us to literally do it justice, do that conversation justice today. But are you down to do that, Five?
Absolutely, no doubt. And I'll do it live, and I'll present screenshots and documentation. I won't just talk. I'll show.
Yeah, that would be dope. I would love that.
I broke it down on my channel, by the way. I got videos breaking it down.
Oh, we'll put your link in the chat.
Thank you. I will do.
Okay. And then, yeah, go ahead. I was trying to get us all to say goodbye, but go ahead.
Oh, no. I wanted to make a little comment.
Okay.
Five, you should probably change your channel name, because it's really hard to find by search. That's the only comment that I have towards it. I tried to search up your name, your YouTube channel, but the way the YouTube algorithm works, it shows the most views that the most viewed videos in 24 hours get the highest user score. So it's unless you have $100,000, I mean not $1,000, 100,000 subscribers or whatever, if you have a really common name, your channel isn't gonna show up by search.
Thank you for that, but I know I need to do that. I just started my channel about 2 months ago, so yeah, I don't have a lot of views. So, but thank you though. I'll do that.
Well, hopefully we can get you some views, but you gotta put your channel in the chat. Put it in the chat, because there's some people that do want to check out your videos. Did you have was that what you had to say in closing, Five, or did you have something else to say?
That's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to just put a bug in our people's ear. That's all.
Thank you, Five. Thank you so much for coming up. You added so much to the conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you. Appreciate it. And I look forward to our conversation on those topics. We have to do it after the 8th, though. Like,
Okay, thank you so much.
because I'm pressed right now, but
I'm ecstatic to just be here talking to you guys. I've been following you for about a year now, and I love all your information. I love the chat. I've heard you before, brother Doc, and you always hit on all cylinders. So I was never really in disagreement with you per se, and brother Mister and everybody.
I'm really
Oh,
looking forward to our conversation though, Five. One, because I actually haven't had a conversation with anybody on that topic before, like just not even in life, right? I know about it because I've read like people's opinions on it, but I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. So like genuinely, I'm looking forward to that. Mister, do you have anything to say before we go?
Just circling back to the original conversation, I think, appreciate everybody's commentary. I just think a lot of us are going through what, famous black psychologists, framed, negrosance or negrescence. I think these folks are really learning how to be black, and they're going through stages, and they don't know what stage they're actually in, and they think they're revolutionary when they're really not. They're in a pre-encounter stage, or encounter, or emergent, or internalization stage, or commit. They don't know where they are, and I don't think it's dissonance, and from their perspective, I think that they don't know where they are, but they think they know where they are, and it's doing us a disservice, and they think they're actually doing us a service. And this Black Lives Matter crap and this kneeling and everything is not going to put us in the position where we need to be. We need to have more of a revolutionary praxis, and it needs to be, multifaceted. And, I'm just really sick and tired of, black folks dying and black folks lying. And I'll end on that note.
Everybody good?
I think I can muster up a little bit of something.
Okay.
And I guess I'll try and be as concise as possible, because that's almost impossible for me.
I was telling Mr. behind the scenes, I'm like, he talks like the Bible, like very detailed.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what I could say. But
I'm cutting you off.
Huh?
Subscribe to the kid. That's what he's got to say.
Yeah, subscribe.
Five, you have
anything to the kid. The kid is me.
No, I mean, I was just, I'm just listening and close. I was trying to post my link in the chat, but it was just telling me that I couldn't. I don't understand why.
Wait, but somebody should be able to approve it. Put your link in the back chat, and then I'll post it in the chat.
Yeah, because I think you have to be a mod or higher to post links.
But normally we should be able to see and approve them, right?
I don't know, actually.
Put it in the chat here in StreamYard 5, and I'll put it in the chat for you. So yeah, all I have to say, just to circle back around, is that we have not made any progress, right? And at the end of the day, everybody just needs to stop whining, right? If you aren't going to engage in revolution, if that's not what we're doing as a group, then what we need to do is we need to stop whining. You need to start being active in your local PTA. You need to start, trying to build a business, get yourself some land. You make sure you show up at the voting booth for every single possible vote. You need to get really active in the community. When it comes time, to elect an elected official, you need to be knocking doors for the official that you choose. So these are the things that you need to do if you're not going to be part of a revolution. Otherwise, I don't want to hear anybody's whining. Like, I just don't. Whine about what? You haven't done all you need to do to be a responsible citizen and participated in as fully as possible in American society, and that is the problem. And if you would do better in your participation in American society, then you would be able to integrate in a way that is beneficial, and you would be able to combat many of the things that are happening within our community. Now, flip side, you can have a revolution. But, since nobody's doing that, I'm going to have to ask that you guys be functional members of society. And once we have given 1,010% to being functional members of society, at that point, then we can revisit these conversations. But just the general, being upset about stuff, I think that that's a waste of time. You got to, can't be lukewarm. You know what I mean? You need to be hot. You need to be cold. You need to get on one side of the sink, all right? Decide which tap you're coming from and roll with that. But all this middle ground stuff is why we can't accomplish anything. We can't accomplish revolution because everybody's in the middle. We can't accomplish being unified, productive members of the American society because everybody's in the middle. So you guys need to jump to one side or the other. That is my personal opinion.
Facts.
So with that said.
Also, Irene, did you see what Nilly says in the chat?
What did Nilly say?
Just read. I'm so flustered right now.
Oh, are you reading the dictionary?
No.
A sexy voice. Like, can y'all not flirt in front of me, young people? Old people like when young people flirt. That's gross. Anyway, I'm sorry I haven't been around. Obviously, unfortunately, you guys, I don't know if I'm going to leave this live up on the channel. I'm trying to keep everything streamlined, so I'll probably make it unlisted, and then it'll probably go to my members only page, only because for no other reason than I need to keep my videos very streamlined on the channel. This was an amazing conversation, though. It will be unlisted, so you can still share it. You can still come back and watch it. It will still be accessible to you for the next week or so. So please knock yourselves out. And I'd like to thank my panel. Y'all were wonderful to listen to. But yeah, we need to not be lukewarm. Oh, wait. And one last thing before we go. So you guys can be prepped for my next conversation with 5. Go over to his channel and check out his videos because we're going to be discussing our H factor and the scientific, genetic differences between whites and blacks. And I think that will be an interesting conversation. I don't think we may agree on every point, but it will definitely be a conversation that everyone will enjoy. And oh my goodness, y'all stop flirting. So, bye. Bye.
You guys have a great week. Thank you so much.
You too. You guys are so